We have been talking a little bit about the situation with the market this week. Obviously, it's been an up and down week, and a lot of people blaming China, the Chinese economy, Chinese devaluation for some of that. Some of your rivals, Senator Rubio, well, first Senator Walker said we should cancel the Chinese state dinner. Senator Rubio says we should downgrade it to a working dinner, and Donald Trump says that Obama should give him a Big Mac. So I'm curious what you think of those proposals, in quotes, by your Republican rivals related to China.
I don't care if we have a state dinner or not. It's what you say, no matter whether you're at McDonald's or at a state dinner. I wish we'd communicate to the Chinese that we want a good relationship. Undervaluing the yuan, manipulating your currency is bad for the relationship. Building islands over resource-rich waters claimed by others, cyber attack, intellectual property theft is going to jeopardize this relationship. We will be hurt, but you will be hurt more. Change your behavior and enjoy your wine.
Well, then, Senator, can you give me something concrete that you would change in U.S. policy toward China? Because most of those things you've talked about are already U.S. policy.
Well, we haven't done anything on currency manipulation. I would declare them currency manipulators.
And start a trade war?
Well, no, start a level playing field. If you think starting a war is fighting back for your interests, then I disagree. I think they intentionally manipulate the value of the yuan that creates a discount on Chinese-made products at the expense of American manufacturers who compete in the world marketplace. And if I were president, they'd pay a price. I got 67 votes for a currency manipulation bill with Chuck Schumer.
Senator, I'm going to ask you about Donald Trump, but I know it's the unavoidable question. There was a Monmouth University poll that came out about South Carolina, had Donald Trump leading the way in your home state, 30%, had you down at 4%. He mocked you a little bit, as he often does, on Twitter. You fired back and said you called him an idiot, a complete idiot on CNN, and said you'd beat his brains out if he came to South Carolina. The question I have for you, I enjoy it when you say those kind of things. They're always fun.
Yeah. Having a little fun with the Donald.
But do you think that, look, I mean, it feels to me, some would say that kind of firing back at him is kind of stooping to his level, that you're kind of playing the game on his turf. Do you think that kind of helps your cause, first of all, and do you think it helps the kind of tone of the debate to fire back at him in that way?
Well, number one, you can't take yourself too seriously. So at the end of the day, I think the problem with Mr. Trump is that his policies really don't work. You're not going to destroy ISIL by taking oil owned by the Syrians and the Iraqis. You'll turn everybody in the Mideast against us. It'll be the greatest recruiting boom in the history of ISIL. It will isolate our friends in Israel and Jordan. It would be a nightmare. It'd be a blessing for ISIL. Donald Trump's policies would help ISIL more than anything I could think of. That's what will be his undoing.
Senator, Donald Trump has been gaining traction in part because a lot of Americans like what he says economically. I'm curious, we've gotten these GDP figures that are quite positive. What's your assessment of where kind of the real economy is right now for most people?
Well, number one, I don't know what he says about the economy. I have no idea what his economic plan is other than it's great and it's going to be big. All I can say is if the next president to deal with long-term entitlement spending, which makes us grease. The economy is stagnant because I think policies in place make it hard to create jobs. But really, the next president needs to dust off something like Simpson Bowles, adjust the age of retirement for Medicare and Social Security, means test benefits, address the mass retirement of the baby boomers that wipe us out by 2040, where all the money in taxes goes to interest on the debt, Medicare and Social Security payments. Get us in a room as Republicans and Democrats and deal with the unfunded liabilities of this country, which are $70 trillion. That's what I want to do as president, to bring us together, not insult everybody.
Senator, let me ask you another political question. There was a story in Politico this week, talked about your home state, and talked about the kind of bind, as they portrayed it, that some elected officials down there and other leaders in the party are with respect to you. Former Governor Beasley, current Governor Haley, Mark Sanford, others who have not endorsed you. And the story basically says, look, they don't want to endorse Lindsey Graham because they don't think he's going to be the nominee, but they're trying to give him some space right now, but they won't end up being with him. So my question for you is, do you think that's a true assessment of the situation down there? Why are those folks not with you? And is there any chance they will be with you by the time the primary comes?
At the end of the day, how I perform in South Carolina will be determined how well I do outside of South Carolina. You know, I've been in the state for 20 years. People have been incredibly kind to me. I've got a great donor base. I won a 6-way primary where I was Lindsey Graham and it was all about immigration, about 41 points. So at the end of the day, what's going to get me through South Carolina is to perform well in New Hampshire and do well in Iowa. And if I don't do well in Iowa and New Hampshire, then it will be a campaign that needs to be reassessed. But I feel good about South Carolina. We're smiling faces, beautiful places. I don't know how Mr. Trump fits into that model. Time will tell.
Senator, really quickly, I have to ask you, look, I'm an economics reporter, but I see you, a respected member of the Armed Services Committee, someone who obviously is a strong voice on national security, but you're destroying a phone and slinging insults with Donald Trump. Tell me why, for you personally, this is worth it.
Oh, it's fun. I mean, he gave out my cell phone number on national television, so I had fun with it. And at the end of the day, we'll get serious. This is the silly season. You know, you had Scott Walker talk about destroying ISIL today. I like Scott, but there is no plan there. If you don't have American ground troops in Iraq and eventually part of a regional army to go into Syria, there's nobody left in Syria to help. So at the end of the day, if you don't understand we need ground forces in Iraq and Syria, then you're not serious about destroying ISIL, you're not ready to be commander-in-chief. And John Kasich's a great guy. He said defense cuts under sequestration didn't bother him at all. Well, they bother the hell out of me because we're going to destroy the military.